What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTP Sports. And it has been I would say, a very hectic span of under 24 hours with the Flyers and the NHL draft and just a whole bunch of craziness and a whole bunch of nonsense and everything. Yesterday especially was just crazy, as most of you know. I told you all here leading up to the NHL draft that I would be over with Snow the Goalie doing their draft coverage, and that was a very fun time. We were basically delirious by the end because of how long the draft process was going, because holy fucking shit, that draft dragged. The first round especially, the fucking dragged. It dragged so long, and you would think that the centralized draft would make things go way quicker. No, they found a way to make it longer. They found a way to make it drag. It felt like there was 30 minutes between each pick. That's how long it was taking. My God. My God. But it eventually ended. And then we get to day two. And basically, day two is almost over. They're in the 7th round right now, but the Flyers do not have a pick in the 7th round this year. And Danny Briere and Brent Flahr are doing their press conference as we speak. So most likely they are done for today. And the Flyers, they did make a bunch of picks in this year's NHL draft. Obviously, we knew going into this draft they had 3 first-round picks, 4 second-round picks. One of those second-round picks they traded in the deal to get Trevor Zegras, so they had 6 of those picks left over going into this draft. So, first round, a lot of crazy stuff happened. So, obviously, if we just go through the entire draft order as is, and, I'll explain my reasoning for, why I believe, well, obviously, Flyers draft Porter Martone with the 6th overall pick in the NHL draft. And obviously, it's a fantastic pick. It was a fantastic pick for the Philadelphia Flyers, and I will explain everything right here because I had James Higgins ranked, well, not ranked, I had James Higgins as the pick for the Flyers in that spot, just because I just felt Porter Martone probably wasn't going to get there. He probably wasn't going to be there at 6. And the Flyers did say, there was also a post from Anthony Sanfilippo, leading up to the draft and everything like that, there's a lot of, noise circling around the Flyers room that when it gets to get the pick 6 and that player is there, the player that they're most likely going to take and they're really seeing a high interest in is Porter Martone. And even way before the draft, basically you're going in towards the regular season and near the offseason, Porter Martone has basically been, I would say, a top 4, top 3, top 5 consensus ranking basically the entire year. And then eventually he started to drop a little bit because some other players started to rise, but mainly Martone was like a top 3, top 4, top 5 projected pick. That's why I never really expected him to be in a position to be drafted by the Flyers. That's basically really where I didn't have him on a draft ranking, because I just didn't expect him to be there. But when he is there, when he does fall to that position, because the Islanders, they obviously draft Matthew Schaefer, and that was a very beautiful moment right there. Michael Meza, he goes to the San Jose Sharks. Frondell, he goes to the Chicago Blackhawks. Caleb Deonoye, he goes to the Utah Mammoth right now, as they're now named. And that definitely, I would say, it was a little bit of a shocker. I didn't expect Deonoye to go at 4. I expected him maybe to go at 5 or something like that. But that's another person that the Flyers were quote-unquote interested in that wasn't expected to be there at 6. He goes in the top 4. And then basically Nashville shocked a lot of people by drafting Brady Martin with the 5th overall pick. And Brady Martin definitely was a late bloomer, late riser in this year's draft. He just kept going up and up and up and up in the past few weeks, basically. And Nashville is the one that, was going to take him. And for the Flyers, you were in a win-win situation. You had Porter Martone, the best winger in the draft, and you had James Higgins, basically the best center at that point in the draft, and you're just picking between the two. And Danny Briere did say before the draft that they were going to pick the best player available, and yes, rankings-wise, best player available was Porter Martone, and you took Porter Martone, and I believe that is a fantastic pick for this Flyers team. I don't care that Porter Martone is a winger. 6'2", 182 pounds, or 6 foot 6'3", 204 pounds. I was looking at Deone's stats. Look, everything is blending in right here. The past few days have been pretty much mush for my brain. So deal with me. Just deal with me a little bit. 6'3", 204 pounds, right winger, played in the OHL for Brampton, and had a fantastic year. Obviously was ranked very highly as he was. He's also projected, a lot of comparables, scouts. They compare him to the Kachuk brothers. They compare him to like a Corey Perry like type of player. He's a guy that is projected to be a first line winger, a person that can score maybe 30 goals, maybe 40 goals or something like that. Projected to be a top line winger, and that is something. Yeah, I know the Flyers, they are in desperate need of centers, but when you have a chance to also draft a possible first line winger, you can also take that chance because Porter Martone was more highly ranked than James Higgins. I know James Higgins going into this draft was also, this was like a while ago that Higgins was probably going to be eventually projected to be the first overall pick in this draft. And I know over the past week or so, the talks about the Flyers bringing James Higgins to the skate zone in Voorhees after the combine, having him, tour the skate zone and all that stuff. A lot of, even people, including myself, that, believe that, okay, they're doing the same thing that they did with Matvei Michkov. They bring somebody to the skate zone because they really like this player, and they're probably going to draft this player, and they're throwing smoke screens all over the place about a Brady Martin, about Jake O'Brien, and all that stuff. I thought it was going to be, James Higgins, and it probably maybe would have been a James Higgins if Porter Martone wasn't there on the board, but they really loved Porter Martone, and I don't blame them for that. And he was the best player available at that point. And there's definitely a theme when you go throughout this entirety of the Flyers draft, maybe besides like two picks, and that's size. Size and a motor. And like a defining of a motor, just the way they play with edge, the way they play with that, piss and vinegar. And there's a lot of players in this draft of the Flyers, and I find it very hilarious that a lot of the players, basically, if you were below 6'2", like we don't want you. There were two players that the Flyers drafted in this draft that were below 6 foot. Two of them were 5'11", but still they still play with that piss and vinegar type of thing. So it kind of fit the mold of the type of player that the Flyers wanted. But overall, fantastic, ecstatic with drafting Porter Martone. And for some reason, like I said, it was a win-win situation. But for some reason, there's some people that are like, oh, I really wanted Higgins. You should have taken Higgins because you really in desperate need of centers. Blah 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 blah. I know Brodes was really harping on that. You probably should have went Higgins because Brodes fell in love with Higgins. I think that's like kind of clouding his judgment in that spot where most rankings had Porter Martone higher than James Higgins going into this draft. Porter Martone was the best player available, and Danny Briere said they would pick best player available in that spot. They picked best player available in that spot, and that's exactly what happened. Then, you basically waiting for the rest of the Flyers picks to happen, the rest of the draft to happen, and the Flyers had picked 22, the Flyers had picked 31, so we're basically sitting there in like the studio that's like next to the Flyers war room with Snow the goalie and all that stuff, and we're waiting to see anything that happens. Many people were coming through the process of the interviews and all that stuff. If you didn't watch that Snow the goalie episode, it's fairly fun, it's really cool, go check it out. There was a lot of interviews. Mark Gregg, one of the Flyers scouts, was one of the interviews. We interviewed Dan Hilferty. Jackie Spiegel was an interview. Bill Meltzer was an interview. Jason Martinez eventually came on late in the show. Trevor Zegras was an interview. Rick Tocchet was an interview. Kevin Kurtz was also an interview as well. So there definitely were, and also they also managed to get both of the Flyers' first round draft picks on the interview. It's a really good show. Definitely go and check it out. I believe it was I believe Bill Meltzer was on the show at the time when when the Flyers drafted Porter Martone, and that was a very fun aspect. And then and then looking through the entire thing, just waiting to see what would happen. We eventually get to the Pittsburgh Penguins pick, and then Pittsburgh makes their first pick, and then the second pick is taking a little bit, and then we eventually get the news from Elliot Friedman that Pittsburgh's trading down in the draft. They're moving the 12th overall pick, and it didn't happen for like a couple of minutes until we got the other information of who they were trading down with, and then once we saw, Flyers are trading up, I was like, what? And then, when we saw the full thing, the Flyers traded pick 22 and 31 to move up to 12 for the Pittsburgh Penguins 12th overall pick, we were like, okay, they definitely like somebody that is still there on the board and who they're going to draft. And obviously at that point, Russ was really hoping it was going to be Roger McQueen, but Roger McQueen was drafted 10th overall by the Anaheim Ducks. And kind of still, it's kind of the same philosophy that Russ wanted. He wanted to go after the the very tall centerman, and the Flyers ended up picking a very tall centerman that projection wise was not expected to go that high in the draft. But then if you look at some other of main people's mocks, Bob McKenzie had this guy at rank 17. Some people have him at rank 15. Some said as high as 8, some as lower as the later part of the first round of the draft. A lot of the consensus still say it is a reach at that point, and that's more my consensus too. It's definitely a reach at that point, but I'm not gonna fully shit on the player. I'm just not going to do that. They take Jack Nesbitt. And he's a very tall dude. He is a tank. 6'5", 186. There's a lot of negatives around his scouting report. Can't skate. His first step definitely isn't the best. His passing isn't the best. I guess energy or something like that. Just, I wouldn't say his overall game that they're trying to knock. It's just that it's not the big. You're picking for potential, I guess you could say, or you're picking for the very high upside. A lot of the projections have him around maybe like a third line center if everything does go right in the NHL, or if everything goes as he's projected, he's a third line center in the NHL, and maybe if he exceeds that, he's a second line center in the NHL. And yes, I would definitely consider that at 12 to be a reach. But then Anthony Sanfilippo also posted earlier today that the Flyers did get insight from teams that were ahead of them at that point, that Vancouver was definitely selecting Nesbitt at 15, and Detroit at 13 was 100% considering drafting Nesbitt at 13. So the Flyers, they liked their guy. They used 2 of their picks. They got aggressive. They traded up with the Pittsburgh Penguins, drafted at 12, and got Jack Nesbitt. They fell in love with their guy, and they got their guy. I don't knock that philosophy whatsoever. I do like the idea of, if you like a guy, you utilize your assets, especially the draft picks that you did have, and you try to move up into the draft and get to that guy. But yes, overall in the sense, Jack Nesbitt is a reach in the draft. But still, one of the things that we always knock the Flyers over the past couple of seasons, that they don't have size. They don't have size in their prospect system whatsoever. They don't have size on the NHL roster either. Not saying that Jack Nesbitt is close to NHL ready. No, he is not. He is definitely a project type of pick. But it's something that, and this is something that goes along with their entire draft philosophy, they need size. They 100% need size, whether it's on the wing, whether it's at center, whether it's defense. They need size basically all over the place. And it definitely does seem to, it's getting back into that formula and everybody talks about this with the playoffs, that you need size when you get into the Stanley Cup playoffs, because it is a muck. It is a grind going through 4 series of 7 games, possibly, going from early to mid-April to basically mid-June at this point. And it is a very long grind. It is a very long, and, sometimes maybe small players don't survive that grind, especially if they don't have, any type of weight to them, any type of the way that they play, the playoff style type of hockey. And you definitely do need size, let alone with, obviously, players that are just good at the game, players that are skilled, players that are speedy, and everything like that. It's definitely, and especially when you look at a team like the Florida Panthers, where now it kind of looks like that a lot of teams are trying to copy off that philosophy and copy off that mold of just the style that Florida plays, because as immensely skilled as Florida is, because they have a lot of great players on their team, they're very deep. They have a lot of size in that team. They play with a grit. They play with a tenacity. They forecheck heavy. And they're basically just one of the most physically annoying teams to play against in the National Hockey League. And it's one of the reasons why they won back-to-back Stanley Cups. It's one of the reasons why. And teams are looking to copy off of that mold. And it definitely looks like the Flyers are one of those teams that are trying to copy off that mold, and they drafted a lot of size going with this NHL draft. Porter Martone definitely is a very good step into that process. 6'2", like I said, 200 plus pounds, has a lot of potential in there. He could be a very special player. Rick Tocchet said he could be a very special player for this organization. And granted, when you're looking at this draft, like no one's really expecting a lot of the centers to be first line center potential, except for maybe like the top few, like a Misa, like a Frondell, or anything like that. No one's expecting Brady Martin to be a first line center. No one was really expecting Higgins on maybe a Stanley Cup contender to be a first line center. And when you compare that to a potential first line winger, I think, and granted, yes, you do need good centers to win a Stanley Cup. I'm not trying to deny that whatsoever. You need two good centers to win a Stanley Cup. You also need good wingers. You need good top six forwards. And if Brady Martin finishes out where he projects to be, and that's a first line winger that can score 35, 40 plus goals, I'm taking that, especially if he plays with that tenacity like the Kachuk brothers or even a Corey Perry. That's a guy that's going to succeed in the playoffs, because that's a guy that plays playoff style type of hockey. I understand you got to get there first before you even talk about playing playoff style type of hockey. I understand that whatsoever, but they did need to address size, and they addressed that basically tenfold in this draft. But what was also interesting, and I'll go over the rest of the draft in a little bit. What was also very interesting is that the Flyers did not draft the goalie. They didn't draft the goalie whatsoever. So when you get into the second round of the draft, the Flyers, I believe their first pick was at 36, if I'm not mistaken. And then Montreal, actually, they jumped a couple of spots ahead of the Flyers and Nashville to select the player that the Flyers wanted from Russia. And I am 100% thinking in that process. I forget what the player was at that point. Let me go to the Montreal pick right there. Where was that pick? Where was that pick at? It was round 2. It was pick 36, I believe. No, it was pick 34. It was Alexander Zarovsky, so from Russia. And there was a lot of talk that the Flyers really liked Zarovsky. And I'm sure when Montreal jumped Nashville and Philadelphia, that the Flyers probably got very pissed. And so once you got the pick 36, the Flyers, they decided to trade down in the draft. They traded back with the Seattle Kraken. They traded back to pick 38, but then also in turn, they got another second round pick in the process. I believe they also traded pick 68 or something like that over the Seattle for pick number 57. So they ended up trading back 2 spots in the second round, and they grabbed another second round pick to where they have the original 4 second round picks in total. So they move back to pick 38. They pick Carter Amico from the United States Development Program. He is 6'6". He's 232 pounds. He is a right shot defenseman. The dude's an absolute fucking tank. He is a tank. And a lot of, basically when you go around the rest of this draft, when you look at Carter Amico, I have basically some quick summaries of scouting reports here on like CBS News that really tracked the Flyers draft right here. So 6'5" ready from the United States National Under-18 team was the 41st ranked skater on the NHL Central Scouting's final rankings. After spending a while on the clock with their initial draft choice, pick number 36, the Flyers traded back into the second round, giving up pick 36 and pick 68 to Seattle for pick 38 and 57. And basically, some guys that dropped into the, that probably were projected to be, first round picks, dropped into the second round. The Flyers got some great value here, and especially if you got a defenseman that's 6'6", 230 pounds, man. The dude is a fucking tank. It's absolutely hilarious. It really just is. And then the Flyers at pick 40, this was the Anaheim pick in the Cutter Gauthier trade, if I'm not mistaken. They drafted Jack Murtaugh, 6'1", 198 pounds from, once again, the United States Development Program. Once again, just another really good value pick right here. And basically, when you go throughout a lot of these Flyers picks, a lot of people really like these picks, and they find great value in them. And especially the major theme is a lot of these picks have to do with size. And then the third second round pick that the Flyers had was pick number 48. It was Shane. I'm not even sure how to pronounce that name. Shane Vanaski. Once again from United States Development Program. 6'3", right winger, 212 pounds, another power forward from Michigan State. So basically it's right there again. And then the final pick of the fourth round, which was pick number 57, they got Matthew Guard from Canada. He is a center, 6'5", 195 pounds, WHL from Red Deer, and another tank. A center, once again, projected to be like more of a, I would say, a bottom six forward type of role, but for the value in that position, especially when you're considering it is a weak draft, a lot of people did, say, oh, this is really good value. And the Flyers did really have a good overall second round. It definitely makes up for the Nesbbit pick, in my personal opinion, with the value that they got with a lot of the picks here in the second round. And we'll just have to wait and see what these guys turn out to be. But like I said, the major theme is, and a lot of the things that these guys do have in common is the motor that they do play with. They're very physical. They're very heavy. They're all tanks, basically, 6'2" and above, and a lot of good stuff to them. So definitely you could see the theme from these Flyers draft picks. So the Flyers did not have a third-round draft pick because they traded back into the second round. They didn't have a fourth-round draft pick either, so their next pick wasn't until pick number 132 in the fifth round. It was the fourth pick of that round. They picked Matt Westgard, who was the first pick that they drafted that was below 6 foot. So, boo-hoo. Left winger from Finland, he played in Sweden over there, 161 pounds. Once again, he plays with that, piss and vinegar type of thing. He's more of a small, feisty player, but there is definitely some potential with that pick. A lot of the scout people also love the pick as well. So we'll see where everything goes there. Then the Flyers' next pick was, I believe it was still in the fifth round. They had a couple of fifth round picks in here. It was pick number 157. It was Luke Vluski, a defenseman, 6'5", from the WHL in Red Deer. Once again, just another absolute tank. And basically, when you're getting into this late stage of the draft, they're still basically just lottery tickets. You're just hoping you're throwing a dart at a board and seeing which one sticks. But you're still like sticking to that same draft philosophy where we're just drafting absolute tanks. They drafted wingers, they drafted centers, they drafted right-handed defensemen that were all tall, except for two of them. And I think the last pick they had was the last pick that they had was one of the picks that was below 6 foot. Yes, it was Nathan Quinn from the QMJHL in Quebec. 5'11", 173 pounds. Another good value pick. Projects to be a bottom six forward in the National Hockey League. So overall, it was, you're not really going to know what these later round guys in this draft are really going to be. It was really crazy, too, because just in this draft in general, a lot of people thinking, like, oh, it's a decentralized draft, and, maybe since, teams are not on the draft floor, they're back in their own, wherever they're doing their draft parties at, that it might be easier for teams to make trades or anything like that, or something on that type of nature, and we didn't really see any trades. There were a few. There definitely were a few that there was a big thing in the earlier parts of the draft where the Islanders send Noah Dobson to the Montreal Canadiens for picks 16 and 17, and everybody was expecting the Islanders to try to trade back up into the draft once again, then maybe get the pick number 4 to maybe get into that higher part of the first round so they can combine drafting Schaefer first overall and try to get James Higgins, because James Higgins was a Long Island native Islanders fan, and they probably definitely were trying to do that, but at the end of the day, they didn't do that whatsoever. The Islanders actually did have a very good first round of the draft, got some good value. I believe they got, didn't they get Victor Eklund and the Atchison kid? So I think that's what they got. But overall, yeah, the Islanders did have a really good first round of the draft. Pittsburgh Penguins definitely had a lot of questionable picks in that first round. I think they reached on a lot of the players there. But yeah, just like going on to the trades, it's just like was expecting more on the trade value. Not the trade value, but just expecting more on the trade movement. And I guess that just everybody once again getting fooled and just buying into the hype like, oh, this is going to be the draft where every team trades, where you're going to see all these blockbuster trades, you're going to see all these crazy trades go down, and once again, it just never happened. Just never happened. But then also, second round, John Gibson was traded to the Detroit Red Wings for Peter Mrazek and a couple of draft picks. So, interesting, I guess. There's also been some talks during this draft that, I believe it was from Elliot Freeman and other insiders as well, that just watch out during the week that possibly Mitch Marner and the Vegas Golden Knights, the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Vegas Golden Knights, can work a sign and trade with Mitch Marner or something like that. So that's definitely interesting. Vegas, it was clearing some cap space, and obviously they're most likely going to be in the Mitch Marner sweepstakes to see what happens there. And we're actually getting very close to free agency. Free agency starts in a couple of days too. That's what, July 1st. So it's definitely going to be an intriguing time. Yeah, it's Tuesday. So it's like, it's weird. You have to draft these 2 days, and then like 3 days after, it's free agency. It's so weird. I'm so used to free agency being like a week after. So that is crazy stuff. Even like for like goaltenders that the Flyers possibly could have gone after. I think that Hofer guy from St. Louis, he extended a contract there for 2 years. So it definitely, and Sam Bennett also extended with the Florida Panthers. He signed an 8x8 contract, so a person that was expected to hit the market, he stays there. Same thing with John Tavares. He was expected to hit the open market, but I think he took a 4x4.5 with the Toronto Maple Leafs, so he stays there. Very team friendly discount. But I was very shocked the Flyers didn't take a goaltender whatsoever in this draft. I think there was a Russian goaltender that they were intrigued by that probably got drafted. So they probably just derailed into it's like, the goaltending talent probably wasn't intriguing there as much. And they decided not to go with a goaltender. But I still want to know what they possibly are going to do with a stopgap goalie, because 100% they're going to go after a stopgap goalie, whether that's in the trade market, whether that's in free agency. And realistically, the only goaltender that I see them going after in free agency is most likely Jake Allen. I don't see them going after an Alex Lyon. I know an Anton Forsberg's out there, but that's not really as intriguing to be a starter. And granted, these guys are going to be a stopgap, so we don't know what the hell's going to happen at that point. But obviously John Gibson's off the board now since he was traded to Detroit. Thatcher Demko obviously is still a name out there that possibly could get traded or something like that. I don't know what realistically, and obviously the Thatcher Demko, there's a connection with Rick Tocchet and all that stuff. So realistically, I don't know what they do with the goaltending part. Obviously, you still can't go into next season with the goaltending tandem of Fedotov and Harrison, and I think they do realize that. But it's just weird. It's just weird not to see. And then granted, the goaltender that they would have drafted here wasn't going to be nowhere close to being ready. And they still have Zavragan over in the KHL, and how many more years it takes for him to come over. So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, it's just weird stuff. Weird stuff. And I'm sure a lot of more rumors are going to come out as we get closer towards free agency, which is in a few days. And I'm not sure how active the Flyers are going to be in free agency. I'm sure they're going to make some minor signings. I don't expect anything major. I feel like they'll be more active in the trade market or something like that. So, and obviously, I do think eventually they're going to be signing that guy from the KHL, Shabanov. So that'll be very interesting. Maybe that's also why they drafted so much size, because Shabanov is very short. So maybe they drafted a bunch of size just to make up for the Shabanov signing. So that would be very interesting on that front as well. But yeah, it was a very interesting draft. I would say overall, the first round, I would have given that like an A minus B plus just for Porter Martone alone. Jack Nesbitt definitely lowered the grade a little bit, but I wouldn't lower it too much. I know Brodes gave it like a C minus or something like that. He really hated the first round. He doesn't hate the Martone pick. He just really hates the Nesbitt pick, which is very understandable. I can understand why people would hate that. But I would give I would definitely give it like an A minus B plus for the first round. And I think in the overall for the draft, I would give it like a B plus. The second round, definitely there was a lot of value there. And that second round was very good by Danny Briere. So he definitely found value throughout the draft. And granted, there was a pattern, a lot of power forwards, a lot of big bodies. And that's was their philosophy for this draft. So really can't blame them whatsoever. Oh yeah, I did hear the rumor about Kochetkov possibly too. So maybe there's a factor there. I have no idea. We'll just have to wait and see what they do with the goaltending position. But overall, this draft was really fun. This draft was the experience yesterday was definitely fun with Snow the goalie. I definitely thank them for that opportunity. It was a very fun time, but like I said, we really did get delirious at the end because the draft was just dragging on for so long, and we were just like, are they going to do anything else? Are they done? Because usually, when they're done, they have a press conference when they're done, and they just never had the press conference until the end stages of the draft, the first round. We're like, what's dragging on so long? So we're just like, what's going on? Then we eventually stopped after like pick 29 because that was eventually finally when Danny Briere had his press conference. So it's a crazy time. It was really a crazy time. last night. It was very fun too. A lot of the guests were really good, and you'll see a lot of that content fleshed throughout Snow the Goalie throughout today, tomorrow, and Monday as well. There's a lot of stuff that's already been posted for today. A lot of the stuff I'll work on for tomorrow, like tonight or something like that, and then more stuff. Like for today, we have the Snow the Goalie interview with Martone and Nesbbit. We have the interview with Zegras. We have the interview with Rick Tocchet. So all that's being scheduled out for today. Tomorrow's going to be the Dan Hilferty interview. Same thing with Mark Gregg. That interview is going to be those interviews are going to be tomorrow with the shorts. And then Monday we're probably going to do more of the miscellaneous things that happen, like the reactions to the picks and everything like that. But so we'll see. We'll see what goes down. But yeah, it's a very fun time. Yesterday was very fun, and I do think overall, from the most part, I do like the draft by Danny Briere. I think some people are just going to criticize it just based on the patterns that they were going through because obviously they played a favorite with the player size and all that stuff. I think a lot of teams actually played favorite with sizes and all that. I don't think it was just a Flyers thing. I think someone put out there was like a pattern, like in the first round, there was only like 6 players in the first round that were below 6 foot that were drafted. So I think Florida's definitely changing a lot of things with the way teams think with the player roster construction. So we'll just have to see how the thing plays out. But I want to see if there's anything on the Twitterverse before we get to the Anytime Hotline here. Obviously, Danny Briere and Brent Flair, they had their press conference as we were speaking, so I think they're done at this point. So I just want to see if there's anything that really stands out. Brent Flair reiterates what Danny Briere said yesterday. Size wasn't a major priority with the picks. Mentioned the picks just kept coming and wasn't the thing. And wasn't a thing where they keep wanting size. It just happened that way. Also, just talking about Porter Martone, Carter Amico, and all that stuff. So I think it was just Brent Flair that was talking during the press conference. So realistically, we'll see where everything goes from there. But we do have a couple of voicemails. We have 2 from Sean, actually. One was from yesterday, one was from today, and we also have one from Ray as well. So we might as well get to those, and then we'll end it off. It was also funny, too, because the Phillies did play yesterday, and they smoked the Braves. Go figure. And they were in a very long rain delay. So that was crazy at the same time. We'll talk about the Phillies after tomorrow's game. I don't feel like we talk about the Phillies today. Especially with all the tiredness that's been going on. We were all exhausted after last night. It was crazy. But let's get to these 3 voicemails here, and then we'll see.
Amadeo, hopefully you had fun tonight with the Snow the Goalie game. Obviously the buzzword, if you want to say it, for the Flyers, night one is that size matters. I mean, you get a big winger in Porter Martone, and you get a big center in Jack Nesbitt. I mean, with Martone, there were rumblings that they liked him. I have no issue with this pick. He was probably the highest-ranked player on their board. Nesbitt, again, obviously they wanted this kid. They traded up the 2 picks to get him. The NHL draft, there usually is an instant gratification, so it'll be some time before we see these kids. But again, the Flyers have preached that they wanted to get bigger. They said that they wanted to improve their depth at center, and they've done that. I'm still curious to see if they might add a veteran player at some point before the weekend is over, but we shall see.
I think they'll add that veteran player most likely in free agency. There was also one thing I do before we get to Sean's other call from today. I do think that it's rumored out there that Porter Martone is actually going to be going to college. He's taken the NCAA route since now players that play in juniors can go over to college and transfer over there. I believe he's getting a lot of NIL money offered from Penn State. I think there's 3 teams that are offering him money. It's Penn State, Michigan, and Michigan State, and I think Penn State's offering the most at like $250K. There's nothing confirmed yet of whether he's going to college or not, but I think he will go to college, especially with that money offer that he's getting. But if he does go the college route, I think that will be especially even more beneficial to Porter Martone's game because he can get even stronger down with college. So that would be very fun, especially if Penn State with all the players that Penn State is recruiting, especially if Penn State also gets Gavin McKenna. My God, Penn State will be the instant favorite for the Frozen Four to win the NCAA title. My God, they would be so fun to watch. That would be must-watch hockey. It really would be. Let's get to Sean's second call from today.
Yes, it's the all Sycamore draft through day 2, Amadeo. And I'm also feeling quite patriotic as an American today because that seems to be where the Flyers are leaning. But, checking Twitter and checking, the national scope of things, there's not too many complaints with what Briere's doing today. I mean, they did want, it's pretty obvious, the Russian winger that Montreal beat them to the punch to get.
Yeah, I'm sure
But
Danny's
a
pissed.
solid, pivot by Danny to trade down and get a few players that have a lot of upside. A few players that many of the scouts like. I mean, they've definitely improved their size, that's for sure. Now I'm interested to see where they go as far as free agency. I don't think there's going to be a lot of activity, but goaltender has to be in their crosshairs. John Gibson comes off the board as a trade possibility today, but they've got to pivot to land somebody, probably an Alex Lyon, who knows. And, solid work throughout by Danny today. No arguments from me.
Oh yeah, overall he definitely did have a good day. Yeah, goaltender. I think they'll address it at some point in the offseason, whether that's trade or free agency. So we're just gonna have to wait and see on that front. But yeah, I think Danny was really because I was actually talking to Russ on the phone like while the Flyers were making that or while that trade was happening with Montreal, and I was like, oh my God, Montreal traded up to get that guy, and I'm like, what? So we're just like, yeah, Danny's probably pissed. So yeah, it definitely was a good pivot. It was a smart move to move back down 2 spots, and then he grabbed another second rounder in the process. So you got guys with good value in the second round. So I think first 4 of the 5 picks that what was it, 6 picks actually, 5 of the 6 picks. I think we're good. A lot of value there. The Nesbbit one, we'll just have to wait and see how time goes. I do think that overall that was a reach, but I'm not gonna overall hate the guy for it. So like some people are, but we'll just wait and see where it goes. But yeah, overall I did enjoy the draft by the Flyers overall. And let's get the Rays call. I think this is the first time Ray maybe has called here. Possibly. I've seen Ray before in the chat, but I don't think he's called him before. Let's see.
Hi, Amadeo. It's Ray down in Tampa. They did a great job drafting a lot of the players, but now it's time for the player development people to step up to the plate and get the job done. Because if they don't do their job, you're going to just be drafting more players and more players again. Think Buffalo Sabres. Okay, you have a good day.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. It's up to the development team now. And I do think Danny Briere and Keith Jones have a better idea of people to bring in for the development and all that stuff. So I do trust their mindset with those philosophies. So we'll see where everything does go. I don't think they'll be ending into a Buffalo Sabres route. Obviously, you have Matvei Michkov now, you have Porter Martone, you still have some good players here. We'll see. We do see the vision with Danny Briere and Keith Jones, so we're just going to have to see that play out through. We just are going to have to. But yeah, overall, I would say this definitely was a good draft. I know a lot of people are like frustrated with the Nesbbit pick because it's a similar thing to reaching on a player like you did with Jet Luchenko last year. So like I said, we're just going to have to see how everything plays out. It really just is that fact. But you did improve one thing in this draft, and you got a lot of size. You did get a lot of size, and a lot of those size players are good players here. So we'll just see how they develop, and hopefully they'll be Flyers sooner rather than later. So we'll see. We'll see. So got some guys in the chat right here. Mainly Sean. We got Michael. We got Joe Fisher. So yeah, if you're not under 6'6", the Flyers do not want you. Flyers don't want you. Was hoping for Bowen Byram today, but more moves are coming. Yeah, I do think eventually you'll see something. The Flyers have been very interested in Bowen Byram for a while. I think eventually it will happen. I know with Trevor Zegras, they were interested in Zegras for a while as well, but those talks like scapered off a little bit until they eventually traded for him. So maybe something will happen like that. We'll just have to wait and see. Did I snag some draft merch? I did not. I was not able to snag some draft merch, but the family that was down at the draft party in the Hard Rock, they got a lot of rally towels. So, do you want a rally towel, Sean? Do you want a bunch of the rally towels that we have? Yes, we did draft a lot of size. Got a lot of size for the playoffs, and I think that's where a lot of teams in the NHL are just going to go. Martone and Nesbbit play together for a time. I think that's why they drafted Nesbbit. I do remember Martone saying something about playing with Nesbbit, so those two are definitely familiar with each other. I think Schaefer in like an interview a while ago said like, "Who's the hardest player you've ever played against?" And I think he said it was Nesbbit. So take that for what you will. Yeah, Marner appears to be on the move. I think someone just actually posted it was like it was for like Nick Waugh and Nick Hague possibly on that sign-in trade. So we'll just see where everything goes. Yeah, if Martone goes to college, that'll be insanely scary. Because college you only play on the weekends, and in between the games you're most likely focusing on schoolwork. You're doing training, you're practicing and all that stuff. You're training in the gym. Dude's 6'3", 208 pounds. Imagine how much bigger he can get. He's still growing. That is crazy. Oh yeah, I did remember seeing. I did see they brought in a UFC fighter to help teach the players how to be more physical and all that crap. Are we bringing back Broad Street Bullies hockey? Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, from Elliot Friedman, Nick Waz likely headed to Toronto with the Maple Leafs and the Golden Knights complete a sign and trade involving Mitch Marner. So we'll see how that goes. He wanted a Nesbitt jersey. I don't think that was happening. I don't think that was happening. What number did Martone wear? Was he didn't Martone wear 94 or something like that in Brampton? Yeah, he wore 94. Does Martone wear 94 with the Flyers? I think that'd be a cool number. I know there's like some numbers out there that the Flyers players have. They're like, but when you get into like the 80s, the 70s, and 90s ranges, those numbers are kind of cool. 94, I think, would be sweet for a Flyers player. That'd be nice. Paired very well with a possible Connor McDavid 97 when he signs with the Flyers in free agency. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But that'll do it for today, everybody. Wanted to get you guys caught up with everything with the draft and get my thoughts and views out there. Yesterday was very exciting with the Snow the Goalie crew, and hopefully here's to many more with them. So appreciate you guys for tuning in as always. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and comments and opinions on this Flyers draft in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear those. Don't forget to drop a like. Don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section down below. I always said the comment section. Don't forget to drop a like. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Like I said, my brain is mush. My brain is mush. Hit the subscribe button. Use the code TTPSPORTS. $20 off your first purchase at SEATGEEK. Great deal. Don't pass it up. Now, relax the rest of the day and watch the wrestling that I missed out on yesterday and for today.